Hello there, this is BK. I'm bringing you my first video ever on YouTube. I'm part of a local play group that gets together in Princeton, Kentucky once a month, usually the last Tuesday of the month, to play some form of old school, whether that's OS 93, 94, X Points, Premodern, some variation. Sometimes we play Legacy. And tonight I'm going to be bringing you a couple of videos from our last meetup in April. You'll see that this starts in round 2. I did video round 1, however, the computer I was using to record was unable to keep up with some of the settings for that particular video, and it was a bit jumpy. So I was unable to use that particular video. So we're going to be jumping into round 2 tonight with Jason on Stasis versus David on Survival Welder. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what happened in round 1. We had Chris, who was on Blue-Green Madness. Here you'll see his list. And it's a pretty stock list for the most part. This deck's a lot of fun. He really enjoyed playing it. And told me afterwards that by the end of the night he'd kind of gotten into a groove and really enjoyed playing the deck. Notables here: Wonder, some list 2, some list 1. I guess that's really more of a personal preference. Chris decided to go with 2 for this night in particular, and did fairly well. And here we can kind of take a look at his sideboard, playing a couple of waterfront bouncers, a couple snaps, a couple of annuls. Another deep analysis, just trying to vary his answers for any potential opponents that he might face throughout the night. Red decks are usually fairly prevalent. They haven't been as much recently at Dragon's Den, but red decks are usually fairly prevalent, so the inclusion of the 3 blue elemental blasts here shouldn't go unnoticed. His first round opponent was Mark. Mark was playing a deck that we call Blue-White Flippy. He's got some new and some old art here, so you may want to take a look at that relatively closely in order to see what's going on here, because some of us old hats can't really make out what's going on with some of the new cards with the artwork. But we see, for example, Meddling Mage, Exalted Angel. This appears to be Silver Knight, I think, below Exalted Angel. There's even a Factor Fiction in here, it appears. It's a really cool deck overall. I played a variation of this a few months back, and it's a lot of fun. If your matchups line up just right throughout the night, then you can usually do pretty well. But nonetheless, it's still a pretty fun deck to play. After 3 games in round 1, I believe Chris came out on top in this particular matchup. But either way, it was a good time. So on to round 2. Here is David's deck list for this particular tournament tonight. He is on Survival Welder, which uses a combination of Tangle Wire and Triskelion and Sabo's Web and a few other things to welder in and out in order to kind of control the board and present a game state that's unwinnable for your opponent. You'll see some win conditions in there that also include Masticore. This is a pretty cool deck. I don't know that I've ever played against this, but I would imagine it would be fairly infuriating at times. His sideboard has some notable inclusions: Naturalize, Pyroclasm, Ruination, Goblin Sharpshooter. A couple of other things in there like Gigapede, Hull Breach, just some catch-alls, and some threats that are really hard to answer. I was unable to get a deck list from Jason on his Stasis list. However, I did notice throughout the night when he was playing that he was on a blue-green version of Stasis. And it was pretty interesting. You'll see this in some of the gameplay. He was playing Root Maze, which I thought was a pretty neat inclusion. I've not seen that before. I've heard on some podcasts where they talk about how that's kind of a trap. But I don't know. I say play whatever speaks to your heart. That said, let's go on to the gameplay. I've skipped some of the sideboarding in between games as well, so we'll just transition through all those. But this is Game 1, you'll have David on the left, and Jason's going to be on the right. They're going to go ahead and roll to see who is going to get to play first. And that one fell off screen, so I couldn't really tell, but we'll see here momentarily who's going to take turn 1. So the players cut up and get ready here. Also, I apologize for the movement on the camera. We were using a little bit of a different setup this time, and we may have to make some adjustments to that. But the cards appear to come through fairly clear on the video, so hopefully everyone will be able to see that easily. Word to the wise, Jason is playing a couple of cards that are either secret layer or some kind of special edition. I'll try my best to point those out as they come up during gameplay. So David's playing first, and we're going to run out a Quirion Ranger. And then kick it on over to Jason, who's going to take a draw here. And he's thinking it over. And we're going to drop in an island. And first turn, Black Vice. That's pretty typical of this kind of deck. I've played Jason a number of times, and he's pretty good at drawing those. So David's going to go ahead and take his count, show that he has one card over the 4, and take his 1. And he's going to go on down to 19. So we go into our main phase here. You can see he drew a Winter Orb for the turn. So that's pretty exciting. We're going to go and run the team in for 1 damage. We're going to use our untap ability on the Quirion Ranger and add our 2nd mana. And play Sabo's Web. So that's going to make things difficult for any potential Mistress Factories, which I don't think we're going to see, or Wastelands, things of that nature. David draws his card off the Sabo's Web and passes the turn over to Jason, who's going to take a draw after his untap. We're going to see a lot of play draw here, I have a feeling, with Stasis. All right. So this land here, the name escapes me at the moment. However, this is a key component in this deck. It allows Jason to remove cards from his hand in order to untap it during his upkeep, so he can continually pay the cost on that Stasis. So he plays that and kicks it on over to David, who takes his Black Vice damage and untaps, takes his draw. I'm going to think about this for a second or two. Well, maybe we're not. Maybe we're just going to send the team. No, we decided we didn't want to send the team this time. We're doing 2 mana here for that Winter Orb. So that's going to limit us to 1 untapped land per turn. Jason's going to ditch that Flash of Insight to untap his land. And we're going to play a Root Maze. That's that Root Maze I was telling you about. So that's going to make all the lands come into play tapped going forward. And there is a Stasis. Now this is a, I believe this is a secret layer Stasis. The artwork is not one I'm super familiar with, but I had to look this up, and that is in fact what it is. So David's going to go ahead and count his cards and take his Black Vice damage on his upkeep. We're not going to get an untap step, unfortunately, because of that Stasis. David's looking it over. We're going to play a land, which is going to come into play tap because of that Root Maze. It looks like we got about 6 cards in hand right now. So this is getting tough. This is getting tough. The Root Maze Stasis combination is really, really hard. So we're checking some text on this land here to see just how that's going to interact with all the pieces that are in play. And if my recollection is correct, it's really not going to matter too much. He could still just ditch those cards in order to untap that land. So David's going to kick in here for 1, and pass it on over to Jason, who's going to chuck a card and pay the upkeep on the Stasis. He's going to play an island and then pass the turn back. David's counting his cards here for the Black Vice. We're taking damage on down to 13. Things just eating away at life totals here, ruining dreams. Carplus and Forest coming into play tapped here for David. We're doing some thinking. We're going to get in there for one while we can. And I guess they're having a discussion about the text on Query on Ranger. I guess Jason had a question about it. So we're doing some thinking here. Are we going to return that land, untap this creature? It appears that we are not. We're not going to do that right now. We're mulling it over and mulling it over. David taking a good look at what's going on here. He is considering his options, and they are growing fewer by the second, fewer by the turn. We are studying this battlefield, and it's not looking good. Alright, we finally are going to untap that Query on Ranger. And we're going to pass the turn back over to Jason. Jason's going to ditch a card and untap. Take a draw, pay the upkeep on Stasis, and pass the turn right back. Looks like we got a full grip going into this turn, so we're going to take 3 off that Black Vice. We're going to draw our card, so we're now up to 8 in hand. All of our lands are coming into play tapped, and we don't get an untap step. We're going to hit in for 1, count our cards. It's looking like the writing is probably going to be on the wall for us here. And David decides to pack it in, and game 1 is going to go to Jason. So here we are starting in game 2. Game 2 is going to see David on the play to start with. We're going to join in. The players have drawn their 7. I don't recall anybody taking any mulligans throughout this match, which was great for them. We're going to take a look at everything here and decide what we're going to lead off with. Alright, we're going to start with a Carplus and Forest into Birds of Paradise. We need to take our 1, pass the turn over to Jason. Jason's going to play Island, and there is another Black Vice. This guy is so good at drawing those things, I'm telling you all. So David with 5 cards in hand takes his 1, goes down to 18, and draws his card for the turn. We're going to kind of study what's going on here. 2 Carplus and Forest now. It's some pretty painful land. Alright, Findhorn Elves is going to be the play, alongside Winter Orb. Alright, so we managed to dump a couple cards out of our hand and get an orb in play. Jason untaps his 1 island, plays a second one for the turn. He's mulling it over. What are we going to do here? We're going to pass the turn back to David. He's going to untap 1 land in his Birds of Paradise. We got loads of mana to play with here. We're not really under the gun of this Winter Orb. We're going to get down a Query on Ranger and smash for 1 with Findhorn Elves and pass the turn. Jason going to take a draw. Looks like he's drawn his 3rd island of the game. Or played his 3rd island of the game. David making the camera jump all around here. We're going to play a Portent. Take a look at these top 3 and see what's going on here, team. So Portent is a slow trip, as they call it. Lets you look at the top 3 cards of any player's library and either put them back in any order, or you can shuffle, and then you get to draw a card at the beginning of the next person's upkeep, or at the beginning of the next upkeep. So Jason's going to draw his card for the turn. David's going to start off with 3 untapped creatures and 3 untapped lands. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana at our disposal, it looks like. So what are we doing here? What do we got plans for? Looks like we've got 2 in the pool, 4 in the pool, 5 in the pool. We are going to return a Forest and untap Findhorn Elves. Play it. Now we got 6 in the pool, and we're going to play a trike, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, that trike is going to be an arcane denial. Now that's sad news. However, David is going to get to draw a couple cards at the beginning of the next upkeep. So, although the spell is countered, it's not terribly bad. But before we pass that turn, we're going to crash in for 2, and then we're going to tell Jason it's his turn. He's going to untap his 1 island. Of course, David's going to draw the 2 during the upkeep. So Jason's going to take a look at his hand and see what's going on here and try and get a plan moving forward before things get even more out of control. Because it's going to be hard to keep up with counterspells with only 1 island. Those free ones are not as good in this format as they are in Legacy, ladies and gentlemen. So here we see David tapping for 2 and Survival of the Fittest. So this is going to let David pay a green and ditch a creature to search his library for any creature and put it in his hand if this resolves. So Jason's thinking this over here. You know, how are we going to respond to this? Are we going to try to counter it? Okay, we're going to start off with Gush. We're looking for an answer. We're going to draw a couple cards here. And did we find it? Did we find an answer for Survival of the Fittest? We did. We found a foil. So he's going to pitch an island and 1 other card. It looks like a daze. Pitch an island and a daze. So Survival of the Fittest does not hit the table. We are still in pre-combat main phase 1. And it looks like we're untapping Birds of Paradise. So I believe we've got 1 man in the pool right now. So we've got a potential 3 that we can get up to here. So now we got 2. No, just 1. David's having a hard time here. He's really thinking this over. You can't really afford too many missteps against these stasis decks because they're just they will eat you alive. Finally, we just decided to crash in for 1 and pass the turn over to Jason, who's going to draw a card for the turn. He's going to play his 2nd island. We're going to give it a look and see what's up. He's just going to pass the turn back to David, who's got 2 lands untapped now on top of all that creature mana, and then the activation on Quirion Ranger, which is going to give him, I believe, 5 total mana to draw from this turn. And he's sitting at 18. He's a pretty high life total still to be this deep in the game. So we're going to tap for 4, and we're going to play, is that an Anger? I believe that's Anger in a new art. So I guess at this point our direction has changed, and we're just trying to get down some creatures in order to increase that clock. But unfortunately, that's going to be met with another Arcane Denial. So David's going to get to draw a couple more cards if he so chooses. But right now we're going to return to Forest and untap that Fenhorn Elf, and we're going to hit for 2. I'm going to take Jason on down to 14. I'm going to replay that land and correctly pointing out that we can only untap 1 land right now. So Jason takes his draw for the turn and passes back over. We're underneath the 4-card threshold for Black Vice, so we are in good shape. We're going to start the turn off drawing, and they're going to play a 3rd Karplusan Forest. It looks like that David is going to attack in for 2. He's just trying to get this game over with before Jason can land anything meaningful here. A 2nd Winter Orb. I suppose, given the prevalence of Root Maze in the deck, David might be counting on Jason playing something like Naturalize or perhaps Crumble, something to get rid of artifacts. So maybe this is just going to be as a precautionary measure against those kinds of things. So he wants to keep him, just really, really under fire. So Jason's going to take his turn, untap his 1 island, and take a draw. And he's giving it some thought here. Staring down a pretty decent board presence given the state of things here. But that Anger is in the yard, which is going to give all of David's creatures haste. So that is something to keep in mind. So Jason passes back over to David, who takes the draw after it's untapped. He's going to play a land for the turn. Still underneath the 4-card threshold, so we're good on that Black Vice damage. And looks like we're just going to come in for 2 here. Jason's on down to 10 now, it appears. And so David's going to go ahead and pass on back over there. He has 4. He's ending the turn with 4 cards in hand. And Jason's going to pitch an annul. That is a new art annul from, I believe, that is from Mirrodin. That's where that is from. He's going to untap here. We're giving it a good long think. Trying to see what we want to do going forward, because this board state is not out of hand completely, but it's not far off. Alright, so now we're going to land a stasis and pass the turn, and at the end of the turn David's got the naturalized to answer that. So does Jason have an answer to keep that on the board? He does not. I'm wrong. We have thwart. So we are going to thwart and return 3 islands to hand, but David's got the second naturalized, so that stasis is toast. So Jason's going to give it another thought and then pass it back on over to David, who's going to take his untap. And upkeep and draw. We're going to tap for 2, 3. That, despite the glare, that is a tangle wire. So that's got fading 4. And what that's going to do is at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to tap 4 permanents. So David's always going to stay ahead of the curve on this because he's going to remove a counter and he can tap the tangle wire. But Jason does not have that luxury, and he decides to pack it in as we go into game 3. So going into game 3, Jason is going to be on the play. You can see both players start out at 20 life again here. So both players stay on 7 cards, it appears. And how is this going to turn out? This has been pretty tense. This is a good match. So Jason's going to lead on island. No black vice this particular game. That's unusual. He's, like I said, he's really good at drawing those things. So David lands Birds of Paradise on his first turn. We're going to go back to Jason's second turn. We're going to tap 2 islands and play a Cursed Totem. That is going to stop all activated abilities of creatures. So what we're trying to do there is mainly, I think that is in there for the Goblin Welder itself. But I can't recall off the top of my head if that actually stops mana abilities or not. So David's going to use that Wooded Foothills, and he's going to go find a basic land, because of course this is pre-modern and that's all we can get with these is basic lands. No duels, no shocks, nothing like that, but that's okay. We still love this format. So we're going to go dig out a basic mountain and take our 1 damage for that. I'm going to shuffle up and see what David's got. What's the play, David? What's the play? Alright, Jason gets his cut in here. Well, we're going 3 and we're going Tangle Wire again. So that Cursed Totem apparently does not affect mana abilities. So we're going to pass it back over to Jason. And Jason is going to have to tap all 3 of his permanents because he has to tap a minimum of 4. And all we have is 3. So he's going to draw his card for the turn. That's going to tick down. David's going to tap his 3 permanents and draw his card. We're going to land a forest. We have 2 mana available to us right now. We're going to tap 1 and 2. And we're going to go with a survival. So do we have an answer here? Does Jason have a way to stop this right now? Because if not, it's going to get real tough real quick. It appears we do have an answer. We have a daze, ladies and gentlemen. That'll do it. That'll do it. So David's going to pass the turn back over to Jason, and Jason is going to take his draw and play an island. And he's going to pass the turn back over. That's going to tick on down to 2 permanents. So David's got most of his board unlocked at this point. We've got 4 mana available to us. So we're gonna tap 2 here and 3 for another Tangle Wire. All right, this one is met with an annul, which is good news for Jason. That is a cheap answer for that card, and probably the best way to deal with it on the stack. So we're going to pass the turn back over to Jason. He untaps his one land, and he's going to play a Black Vice. David flashes his hand of 3 cards open. So we are under Black Vice. We're staying away from that damage. Tangle Wire is going to go down to 1 counter, so we're just going to tap the 1 for this turn. And what do we have? What do we have? So David's going to take his draw. I'm going to give it a little bit of a thought here. I'm going to tap 1 red. And there is Goblin Welder. Now this is where it gets dangerous, because now if we have a way to get Anger in the yard, that thing's going to have haste and get turned on right now. But given that Survival got countered, I don't think that we're there yet. So we might be waiting a turn. But we are going to naturalize that Cursed Totem. I almost forgot. I forgot about that. I have to say I forgot about that. So that Cursed Totem's got to go. So we can actually use our Welder. So we're going to tap 1 more. Second Welder. This is going to get rough real fast. So now we're going to pass the turn back over. So we're going to be able to weld in and out these tangle wires just repeatedly. And it's just going to be an absolute disaster going forward. We're still thinking about this. We haven't passed the turn, it looks like. Jason and David probably having some conversation there. Jason's deciding what he's wanting to tap for his 1. So we're going to tap our islands and take a draw. Play a 3rd island here. So we have to answer these welders now. Well, we get a propaganda, so that's not bad. That's not bad. That's going to keep. It's going to make it hard for David to attack. So now Tangle Wire is going to have that last counter come off. Of course, it does not leave the battlefield unless it's welded out, or you go to an upkeep where you cannot remove a counter any longer. So David at this point is going to weld in the other Tangle Wire, which is going to come in with 4 counters. And this is just going to make life really, really, really hard. Of course, with that propaganda, it's gonna prolong the game enough that Jason might just draw out of this. He might find some answer to get out of this. So now David's gonna go on and play an Anger, and he's gonna set up his board state here and pass the turn back over to Jason. So he's gonna have to tap 4 permanents. And I don't think that enchantments count. Having a little bit of discussion about Anger and Tangle Wire here. Jason's going to take his turn. He leaves his 4 permanents tapped for the Tangle Wire. We're going to play another land. I believe that's Forsaken City, now that it comes to me. I believe that's what that is. Alright, so passes the turn back to David. David's going to tap his 3 permanents on the Tangle Wire here. And we're going to take a draw. Give it a good look. And what are we going to do here? David's thinking it over. How best to attack this board state with that proper propaganda out there. That can be such a pain. That can throw a real kink in things. Great card, though. Great card. I can remember when that card was released back in 1997. Alright, so we're going to weld back in the other Tangle Wire with 4 counters now. And probably just going to keep doing that repeatedly because, I mean, why not? We're going to pay 2 and attack with an Anger, but Jason's got no answer for that right now. So we're gonna pay the 2 for the propaganda and hit in there and knock Jason down to 18. On his turn, he's going to leave those 4 permanents, those 2 islands, the Forsaken City and the Black Vice tapped. So we have access to 1 blue right now. And we're going to see what happens if he's got any other lands to play for the turn. It doesn't appear so. It appears that he is sending it back to David, who's going to tap his 3 after ticking that tangle wire down. And we're going to draw a card for the turn. It is a Wooded Foothills. So we're going to tap 2 to pay our propaganda tax. And we're going to hit in for 2 more. And we're going to weld back in another tangle wire with 4 fresh counters on there. Minty fresh counters. Again, this is not an insurmountable board state, but it's getting pretty rough. So Jason takes a turn and takes a draw and plays an island and passes it back. David's going to crack his Wooded Foothills and pay his 1 life, go to 18, and he's going to be either looking for a forest. Yep, there we go, forest or a mountain. Getting a forest in this case. Going to offer up the cut, go to 3 on the tangle wire. So we're going to tap our 3 permanents here. Probably a tangle wire and 2 lands if I had to guess. Absolutely. There we go. Going to get our draw in. Take a look at things and see where we are. Alright, so we're down to 3 cards in hand, which still staying under that black vice. He's been good about that. We're going to crash in with our anger. And we're going to weld back in the other tangle wire. Comes up with a fresh 4 counters. And then David's going to pass this turn back over to Jason momentarily. So we got 4. I don't know why he left 5 tapped this time. I'm not sure why he's doing that, but he did take a draw. And so let's see if he's come up with any answers. Probably not on 1 mana or even 2. So now we're going to go back to David. He's going to tick that down to 3. Tap his 3 permanents and take a draw. And now we have a Shield Sphere, which I believe is an 0/6 wall for 0. It gets -0, -1 counters every time it blocks. But the interesting thing about that is it's an easy thing to tap for tangle wire. So we're going to crash back in with anger. Jason's going to go to 12. And now he's going to attempt to Chain of Vapor tangle wire. But we've got the Shield Sphere, so we can just use that to bring in the other tangle wire. So there we go. Fresh 4 counters on that one. We're good to go. Rocking and rolling into the next turn. David's going to pass the turn back over to Jason, who's going to figure out which 4 permanents he wants to leave tapped. He's got to discard a card for that Forsaken City if he wants it, though. Alright, we're going to chuck an Impulse. Looks like they're having some discussion about it. And so we're going to have access to at least 2 mana this turn, if not 3. Alright, here comes Root Maze. Probably a little bit late in the game for that right now. I mean, that's going to slow David down some on some of those lands coming in, but I don't really know that it's going to make much of a difference in terms of how this is going to play out. It may not make any difference at all. We got Naturalized, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, it looks like Jason is packing it in, and he sees the writing on the wall. Mastercore would have been the next draw. Thank you all for tuning in. We do appreciate it.